tuned to Radio Sweden, broadcasting from Stockholm. In the Swedish capital, I'm Al Simon, opening our full-length mailbag as we do on every third Sunday of the month. On the first Sunday of each month, Mailbag shares the time with our Stamp Corner. In this edition, news about our brand new Radio Sweden 50th anniversary T-shirt. And letters with questions like, what do Swedes eat for breakfast? You'll also hear from the man who is one of Radio Sweden's most faithful listeners, maybe the most faithful fan we have. He listens twice a day. How about that? His name is Walter Eriksson. He lives in Brooklyn, New York, in the United States. And Walter has his own orchestra. He himself plays the accordion. So today's musical sound will come from Swedish-American Walter Eriksson and another accordionist, Sweden's own Hasse Tellemar, star of Swedish radio and TV. Here they are together, Walter Eriksson and Hasse Tellemar, with a most appropriate tune for one Swedish-American and one Swede. What else? The Swedish-American polka, written by Hasse Tellemar. Swedish-American polka, written by Sweden's own Hasse Tellemar and played by Hasse along with Swedish-American Walter Eriksson. Walter will be turning up on Mailbag a bit later. But first, Radio Sweden is celebrating this year its 50 years since the first broadcast, and for the occasion we've officially dropped the international from our name and gone back to just simply Radio Sweden. Now, most people associate the American Midwest with Swedish and other Scandinavian immigrants, places like the state of Minnesota. But Swedes, Danes, Norwegians, and Finns had large groups and entire neighborhoods in cities like Chicago. And many never headed west after their arrival in New York City. They stayed put in what we call today the Big Apple. In the borough of Brooklyn in New York City, we have a district called Bay Ridge, Little Scandinavia. And there we have one of Radio Sweden's most faithful listeners, Walter Eriksson. Walter, I know you're there now. Either you're listening to us in person, in Swedish, and in English every day, as you usually do. And even if you're not home, you have trusty tape recorders taping the program so you can hear them when you do get back. Walter has been tuning in to Radio Sweden for more than 35 years. During a recent visit to his home in New York, he told me how it all started.
Well, I was visiting a Swede. I remember it was about 15 years old. And he had Sweden on his shortwave set. It was a big sort of a table model. And I got interested, and I've been buying shortwave sets, and I have it on all the time. In fact, I have 3 shortwave sets at home, so I don't miss anything.
You've gone into radio yourself, working with the station on Staten Island.
Yes, I'm working on a station called WNYM. And the name of my program is Scandinavian Echoes. It's been on the air for 52 years. It used to be run by a man called Hans Berggren, and he passed away in an automobile accident. So I took the show over.
You have 45 minutes on the air, following 15 minutes from the Norwegian church. What are you offering your listeners?
I'm offering them a lot of music from Scandinavia. Tunes that they remember when they first came over.
This is WNYM Radio in New York City. And now, here is your host, Walter Eriksson, with Scandinavian Echoes.
Good morning, this is Walter Eriksson. Welcome to Scandinavian Echoes, where you can hear music from Scandinavia every Saturday morning on WNYM. Let's start off our program today with some lively waltzes from Hasse Telemar's sing-along album, Kustavalt, Axel Öhman, and Jungfrun på Jungfrusund.
What do they want to know about what's happening in Scandinavia?
Well, they want to know, first of all, the dollar value of the crown and the mark. In fact, I have news from Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. And then they want to know how the weather is. I don't know why, but they like to listen to the weather. In fact, I like to hear it also when I listen to shortwave. Everything's got to be quiet when the weather comes on. And then I give them local stories from Sweden about herring, they call surströmming from the north. Little things like that.
We're sitting here now in your home in the Bay Ridge district of Brooklyn. What's left of a Scandinavian community?
Well, we still have quite a few Norwegians living in my section here. And also some Swedes are still left, but they've moved away to Long Island and New Jersey. And now in the Norwegian section, a lot of Orientals have moved in. But we still have our bakeries. We have two Danish bakeries. We have a Norwegian bakery. We have a butcher shop that sells lingonberries and sour herring and hard tack, the knäckebröd, they call it. And people come from all over to Brooklyn just to buy these delicacies.
1988 is the Jubilee year for the founding of the first Swedish colony in the United States in Delaware. It's called New Sweden 88. Is there any revival, any new interest in discovering roots and opening new Swedish shops selling food and other things?
In fact, we have a new restaurant that opened up in Brooklyn, in the old section of Brooklyn where the Swedes first came. Atlantic Avenue, it was called. And we have also a new delicatessen that opened up in Bay Ridge, selling only Norwegian things. I think there's quite an interest left.
How about sports, the church, clubs, and other things?
Yeah, we have a Swedish church in Brooklyn called Salem Lutheran Church, another one downtown in Brooklyn called Bethlehem Lutheran Church, plus a lot of Norwegian churches, plus Finnish churches and Danish churches, all in Brooklyn. And then we have clubs, the Vasa Orden. In fact, I'm vice president of a club called the Swedish Society of New York. And they just celebrated last year their 150th anniversary, the oldest Swedish club in America.
When I think of the Swedes I knew before I left the United States and came to Sweden and grew up in New York City, I used to think of the Swede who was a carpenter, the Swede who was the superintendent of a building with apartments, an apartment house, looking after it. Swedes were sometimes painters and paper hangers and carpet layers. Are they still doing the same things, and do they stick together? Do they get together?
Yes, they're still doing the same thing, the carpenters and the painters. And in fact, we have a society in New York called the Scandinavian Superintendents Guild, consisting of managers and superintendents of all the large buildings on Park Avenue, here in Fifth Avenue. And they do a good job.
We talked about Hasse Telemar, the accordionist. And Walter, you and Hasse teamed up with a song all about the city we're sitting in right now, New York City.
Yes, we recorded a tune called New York, New York. And that we did, I think, about 4 or 5 years ago.
New York, Walter Eriksson and Hasse Tellemar, the Swedish-American and the Swede, who are performing together with this accordion rendition of a very popular song here in the United States, one that's been catching on in Sweden. Walter, how about Swedish traditions being maintained on this side of the Atlantic? You have 2 children, for example. Are they interested? Do you all get together for the holidays and the various occasions?
My whole family gets together. In fact, my daughter has a Swedish folk dance group with 30 members, and they also put on a Lucia. I think we're doing 15 different Lucias, and my wife is also a member, and she's in the Swedish church.
Lucia is the 13th of December, the Festival of Lights, when the Christmas season really is kicked off.
Yes, and then also my son is very interested. He also has a Swedish costume, and he plays the nyckelharpa, the old Swedish key fiddle. I think it's from the 1300s. And then he's also a member of my orchestra, and he loves Swedish music.
Well, back here in Stockholm, through the magic of radio, I'm Al Simon at our Radio Sweden studios, thanking you, Walter, and here's to many more years of Radio Sweden listening in your hometown in Brooklyn, New York. Thank you all for tuning in today. Remember, we do enjoy receiving your cards and letters. The address is coming up again in a moment. So wherever you are out there, have a great day and keep writing.
You've been listening to Radio Sweden, Stockholm. Do join us again tomorrow at the same time and on the same frequencies. Those are 9695 and 15345 kilohertz in the 31 and 90 meter bands.